It was the kind of rain that made the world look washed out, the sky heavy with gray and the streets slick with silver light. Inside the little cafe on the corner of Maple and 7th, the air smelled of roasted coffee beans and old jazz records humming faintly through the speakers. At a corner table by the window, a man sat perfectly still, his hand wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. His name was Ethan Cole, a man the world once called unstoppable. CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in New York, his face had been on magazine covers, his speeches replayed across boardrooms, his success envied by millions. But today he looked like a man who had lost the very thing that made him human. His suit was sharp, his watch expensive, yet his eyes were empty, distant, like he was somewhere far from the clatter and chatter around him. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet ways life brings people together, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this story will remind you how even the smallest heart can mend a broken soul. Ethan had been sitting there for nearly an hour, staring at the rain as if it were speaking to him. He had everything a man could want: power, money, recognition, but not the one thing he needed most. His wife, Anna, had passed away 2 years ago in a car accident that he never forgave himself for. He had been working late that night, missing yet another dinner she'd carefully prepared. When he finally picked up her call, it was too late. She was already on the icy road, driving alone in the storm to bring him food he never asked for, but always appreciated. The guilt had chained him ever since. He came to this cafe every Sunday, the same cafe where Anna used to sit, sketching designs for her little boutique that never opened. The owner knew him well, never disturbed him, always leaving the same black coffee on the table and walking away quietly. Today was no different, except that something unexpected was about to happen. As Ethan rubbed his temples, lost in the storm of his thoughts, a small figure appeared at the edge of his vision. He looked up to see a little girl, no older than 4 or 5, standing in front of him with wide blue eyes and golden curls tied in 2 tiny ponytails. She was clutching a chocolate chip cookie and wearing a pink dress slightly too big for her cheeks rosy from the cold. For a moment, Ethan just blinked, unsure what to say. Then she tilted her head and asked in the softest voice, "Are you okay, sir?" The question hit him like a quiet thunderclap. No one had asked him that in years. Not his board members, not his assistants, not even his closest friends. They all assumed he was fine because people like Ethan Cole were supposed to be fine, but something about the child's innocent voice cracked through the walls he'd built around himself. He forced a faint smile. "I'm fine," he muttered, though the word tasted like a lie. The girl didn't seem convinced. She climbed onto the chair across from him, placing her cookie carefully on a napkin, and stared at him with a seriousness far beyond her age. Her little legs swung back and forth under the table, not touching the floor. "My mommy says when people say they're fine but look sad, it means their heart is crying," she said. Ethan froze. He didn't know why her words felt like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds, but they did. For the first time in months, he let out a small, tired laugh. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lily," she said proudly. "What's yours?" "Ethan." "Hi, Mr. Ethan," she said, offering him half her cookie. "Cookies make sad hearts feel better." He hesitated before taking it, but the simple gesture, that pure childlike kindness, made something inside him shift. As they sat there, she began telling him stories in the way only children can, about her pet goldfish named Pancake, about how she wanted to be a fairy doctor when she grew up, about how her mom said rain was just angels crying happy tears. Ethan listened, each word melting the ice around his soul. But when he finally asked where her mother was, Lily pointed toward the counter. A young woman stood there looking anxious, scanning the cafe until her eyes landed on Lily. She rushed over, apologizing breathlessly. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry!" She just ran off when I turned around for a second. Ethan smiled faintly. "It's okay. She's been very good company." The woman, her name was Grace, as she introduced herself, blushed slightly, brushing rain from her hair. She worked at the daycare across the street and had brought Lily along because it was her daughter's day off from preschool. The cafe was their little weekend ritual. She thanked Ethan again, but before she could leave, Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, can Mr. Ethan sit with us next time?" "He looks lonely." Grace looked at Ethan, unsure how to respond, but something in his eyes, that quiet sadness mixed with gratitude, made her nod. "Sure, sweetie," she said softly. That one small invitation became the beginning of something unexpected. The following Sunday, Ethan came back. Not out of habit this time, but out of quiet anticipation. He didn't know why, but he found himself hoping the little girl and her mother would show up again. And they did. Lily spotted him first, running toward him with a bright smile and a cookie in her hand. "Mr. Ethan," she squealed. He smiled, the real one this time, and waved back. Over the weeks, that small cafe table became a kind of sanctuary. Grace would read her book while Lily and Ethan played little games with sugar packets or talked about imaginary castles. Slowly, the man who had once spoken only to board members began to laugh again, to talk about things that weren't to business or loss. Grace noticed the change too, the way his face softened when he listened, the way he looked at her daughter like she was a reminder of something pure. But behind that growing warmth, Ethan still carried his grief. One afternoon, as the sun set over the city, he finally told Grace about Anna, about the accident, the guilt, the sleepless nights. Grace listened quietly, her eyes gentle, and when he finished, she said something he didn't expect. "You can't keep punishing yourself for loving someone. Love doesn't end just because life does, it just changes shape." Those words stayed with him long after they left the cafe that evening. That night, he stood by the window of his penthouse, looking out over the lights of the city. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel suffocating. He poured a cup of tea, Anna's favorite, and whispered into the quiet, "I'm trying, love. I really am." Weeks turned into months, and Ethan found himself becoming part of Grace and Lily's little world. He attended Lily's preschool art show, brought them lunch once in a while, even helped Grace fix the old heater in her apartment building. Grace, a single mother balancing 2 jobs, never asked for help, but Ethan offered it quietly, without making her feel small. In return, she gave him something he hadn't realized he needed, a sense of belonging. Then came the day Lily fell sick. A sudden fever had her in the hospital for observation, and Grace was beside herself with worry. When Ethan arrived at the hospital with flowers and Lily's favorite stuffed bunny, Grace broke down in tears. She admitted she had no family nearby and no one to lean on. Ethan stayed the entire night by their side, holding Lily's tiny hand, watching the little girl who had unknowingly saved him fight through a rough night with bravery and innocence. By morning, Lily was better. When she woke up and saw Ethan still there, she smiled weakly and whispered, "See, Mr. Ethan? You didn't give up on me." Those words felt like a mirror of everything he'd once lost, and everything he'd just found again. From that day on, Ethan stopped being the lonely CEO the city whispered about. He still ran his company, still made the tough decisions, but now he carried a piece of warmth wherever he went. A reason to smile, a purpose beyond the numbers. 1 year later, on a bright spring morning, he returned to that same cafe. Only this time, it wasn't just a table for one. Lily sat beside him, coloring with crayons, while Grace laughed across the table, her eyes full of the kind of light that made everything else fade away. The rain outside had turned into sunlight streaming through the windows, glinting off the cups and plates like tiny stars. Sometimes life doesn't give us second chances in the way we expect. Sometimes it gives us people, strangers who walk into our lives when our hearts are empty and fill them without even trying. Ethan had lost everything once, but through a little girl's question, "Are you okay, sir?" he found something far greater than what he'd been searching for. He found a family, a reason to forgive himself, and a reminder that even in the darkest moments, kindness can be the light that saves us. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share to help others believe in hope, love, and second chances again.